I would, I would like you to excuse my English pronunciation and grammar mistake. I am here in United States only 4 months. And you should know that English pronunciation is quite different from Polish. If you won't try to say, for example, Polish Jerzy nie wierzy, or chrząszcz brzmi w trzcinie, then you can know how difficult and how different the Polish pronunciation is. I would like to mention you that I am from Jagiellonian University in Krakow. This is the oldest and most famous university in the Middle Europe. It was founded in 1364. Its pupils, its students were such people as Nikolai Copernicus, the world's greatest astronomer, Bronislaw Malinowski, and one of the most outstanding ethnologists, Pope Jean Paul II, who was both the student and the professor of Jagiellonian University. It is many times very hard to talk about one's own country, because as saying goes, it is very hard to be a prophet in one's own time and in one's own country. A good illustration of this situation is the situation in American sociology. Some of the best sociological works about America had not been written by Americans. About 100 years ago, it was Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville who wrote a very good book, Democracy in America. And in 1916, Swede Gunnar Myrdal wrote one of the best books about American society and American people. Let me to tell you some basic facts, some general facts about Poland. Because as far as I know, the American students knows rather little about Poland. Poland lies just in the middle of Europe. On the south, Poland has borders with brotherly nations of Czechoslovakia. In the east, with brotherly nations of Soviet Union. I use especially word brotherly because you can choose friend, but brother is done, is given by God. And according a very old Polish legend, more than 100 years ago, there were 3 brothers, Czech, Paul, and Rus. Czech crossed Tatra mountain toward the south and founded state Czechoslovakia. Lech, it means Paul. Among river Odra and Wisla founded state Poland. Rus went to the east, founded the state Russia, and he kept going and going and going, and the last time he was seen was in Afghanistan. Poland territory ranks as 7th largest among the 34 countries in Europe. It is 2.5 times bigger than Iowa State. Among countries of roughly similar size, Poland is preceded by Finland and Norway, and is somewhat larger than Italy. Poland is a country of young people. Young people under 19 makes up 33% of the total. The average Pole is increasingly better educated. Among children in the 15 and 18 years, 79 attend some sort of school. One Pole in 7 has a secondary education, and 1 in 36 is a college graduate. There is, we know, a general tendency to make dangerous generalizations, and many people regard every Scotsman as a skinflint, every Italian as a potential tenor, every Frenchman as a lady killer, every American as a businessman, and so on and so on. The Poles have not escaped such a stock images. But from the sociological point of view, who is average Pole? I think a Pole is a person who must arrange many things in an informal way. And this arranging is, in a sense, much different and deeper than the meaning of the English word arrange. He must informally look for ways to find and eventually obtain certain basic items that he needs. And he must not only find these items, but he must find out how he can obtain them, through whom, and on which way. And this is all something that is done in a way that is not totally legal, but not really illegal. And without this, the basic Pole would not be able to survive. Maybe some of Polish friend can translate that the największym nieszczęściem dla Polaka to pozbawić go pleców. The closest thing to explain this is the same as fixing a parking ticket here in the United States, or traffic ticket, which is a way of getting around things. The Pole must also fix many, many things in his life with many different people in many different places. A Pole is a person who must always try to find a way to get around the things in order to live and to feel his basic needs. In connection with Polish characteristics of arranging and finding solution to many of his problems, I will give you the following example. It happened now in Poland during martial law. As you may know, many things in Poland are rationed now. Among these things is also vodka. Each adult Pole is rationed 1 bottle of vodka a month, which is very little. A bottle of vodka in the normal stores costs 300 zlotych, but in the black market costs 1,000. However, during the martial law, an interesting phenomenon has risen. There is increasing number of older people getting married, and the reason for this is the situation of vodka being rationed. In Poland right now, in spite of the rationing, a couple will be married, will receive 25 bottles of vodka at the price of 300 zlotych. If they show a certificate in the store that is from the official institution of the intention to get married. Therefore, many old people who are standing in line for vodka and for another goods began to talk and propose marriage to each other, such as old widows to old widowers, old single to widowers, and so on and so on. They could go to a marriage office, pay about 200 zlotych in their city, state and pretend to get married, take a certificate, go to the store, buy 25 bottles of vodka for 300 apiece, sell it on the black market for 1,000 apiece, and never get married. Oh, Polish vodka, sometimes in United States called Polish medicine, I don't know why, has joined the Scotch whiskey, French brandy, Dutch liqueurs. It is no secret that our talent for producing vodka is matched by a talent for consuming it. Even Asian saying, it quotes rounds, a nightingale is to be recognized by its voice, a thief but his eyes, a drunkard but his nose. But perhaps the best advice was given in a such verse of 19th century Polish poet. Drink me a little, but not till you are blind, and you'll be healthy in body and mind. Poland lives within a framework of the political, economical, and military socialistic bloc. Therefore, what are the specific characteristics of Poland within these political frameworks? I am thinking that are 4 or 5 main distinctions. The first, Polish system of private agriculture. The second, strong Catholicism based on very strong church authority. Third, reborn young intelligentsia, which is very conscious of its ties with Latin culture. Fourth, constant tendency for protest to arise from the lower classes and from the common people, which from time to time brings about political changes. And maybe 5, a strong sense of humor, specifically for political jokes. Poles laughed at everything except God, faith, and church. In order to better illustrate a Polish mentality and the Polish sense of humor, I will be telling a few Polish political jokes in the course of the lecture. But I have to strongly emphasize that the views held in this joke do not necessarily reflect my personal political standing or my exact views, but only best illustrate these concepts through widely known humor through a Poland of this time. In socio-economic and political structure, Poland is a socialistic country. The socio-economic system of Poland is founded on the public ownership of the basic means of production, except agriculture. Industrialization has played a decisive role in the process of updating the economy and in the basic remodeling of the system. Industrialization has made it possible to eliminate the rural overpopulation which had existed in pre-war Poland. mainly by offering jobs for more than 5 million people who have moved from farming to non-agricultural occupations. The pattern of Polish agriculture prior the Second World War was as following. More than 50% of farmland was in the hands of large holders, whereas 65% of rural population was forced to live on 15% of farmland. The process of the broad socio-economic changes in Polish rural community began with our land reform announced on 1944. All holdings larger than 100 acres were divided up. 100 acres, it was in meaning of our political authorities a big agricultural enterprise. You can compare it with some American farms. The land reform benefited the landless and the farm workers. Through the reform, above 800,000 new farm was created. The acreage of small farms increased by an average about 4 acres. Maybe the land reform was right from the moral point of view, but I think that it was a mistake from the economical point of view. It only multiplied a number of dwarf farms who have to base it only on hand labor. But this way, a group of landless people were eliminated. One of the most far-sighted decisions taken in connection with the land reform was the creation of the state sector in agriculture, because farms of the people who had left Polish territory was taken by the state. The creation state sector in agriculture was of the far-sighted decision taken in connection with the reform and introducing the first step of socialistic reconstruction in rural areas. In another word, it was the first step of creating only state or collective socialistic farms. Created such farms was the main goal, main purpose of our communistic party. So during all the post-war period, there was no adequate agricultural policy toward individual peasants. Every time when in Poland began food crisis, the state started with favorable agricultural policy. And when crisis was over, state changed the policy. In a result, the peasant do not trust to the government and officials, and the peasant became very, very careful. And after all, they have a big sense of common wisdom, I can say. Let's illustrate it with one joke. After the Second World War, when Poland borders were being disputed, one of the eastern border was the Soviet, and on the eastern border was the Soviet Union or Russia, and on the west side was Poland. It happened that this border divided a peasant farm in half. And the official came and asked the farmer which side of the border he would like to live in. Half mile the eastern, which would be Russia, or half mile the western, which would be Poland. And the farmer said that he needs thought. And finally, he responded he would like to live 1/2 mile on the west. And the official said, my goodness, why? And the farmer went on to say that he heard that Russian winters are very harsh. In the years of so-called accelerated industrial development at the beginning of Polish People's Republic, rural participation in Polish economic growth expressed itself mainly by supplying the labor force required for expanding industry and other sectors. Aside from this, the rural output was accumulated in the hands of the socialist state and served to finance the development of the entire economy. The mainstream of population outflow from countryside was the post-war permanent migration. It is estimated that this migration took about 5 to 6 million people out from rural areas. From the above, it may be seen that the process of industrialization was carried out mainly on the basis of resources provided by agriculture in Poland. It caused Of course, it caused a decrease of farm production, and these difficulties were aggravated by attempts of rapid collectivization of agriculture, process which started in Poland in 1949. The Polish farmers, by all means, do not want to accept cooperative farming, but about 10,000 cooperative farms were organized. Fundamental changes came in 1956. This means, generally speaking, a departure from administrative method of agricultural management and the introduction of economic mechanisms. As a result of that policy was the increase of agricultural production, and the food problem in Poland has been basically solved. Poland has been self-sufficient as far as food is concerned. Also, great amounts of agricultural product have been exported. But then they began, other authorities, they began to think about collectivization of agriculture. The peasant cannot buy basic agricultural supplies. It should be mentioned maybe that the farm, as a big farm in the United States, who has about 2,000 or 3,000 acres, we have such a big estate farms, but on such a farms in the United States, farmer can cope with only with family, with his wife and his children. in Poland, there would be a great bureaucracy staff, manager or director, 2 vice directors, secretary of party organizations, and so on and so on. And by the way, in Poland, if you want to be a director of some institution, manager of a big factory, minister, etc., you have to belong to the party. You have not necessarily to be a good in your profession, but you have to be a member of party. And it is, I think, good joke, with a little exception during the martial law. We have some ministers not belonging to the party. For example, a commander who belongs to the PAX organization. But this joke can illustrate to you the situation. 12 years ago, the very first striptease restaurant was opened in Warsaw. And officials hoped to attract many foreigners there. And after many months of operation the restaurant was not turning a profit. And so the head of local communist organization had come to discuss the problem with the manager of a restaurant and said, "What is the problem? You are not making money." And the manager said he did not understand why he wasn't having any customers coming into restaurant. And the chief of party organization asked it, "Have you checked everything?" And manager responded, "Yes, I have checked it." And what about the main attraction? What about the stripper? "All right," responded manager. "She is very checked woman. She has belonged to the Communist Party for 40 years. Due to agricultural significance in creating the total products, its place in foreign trade was and still is very prominent. Agricultural and food exports were and remain for Poland an important source of finance for the import of manufactured goods, and therefore for an important factors for development of national economy. The growing disproportion between the demand for agricultural products and their supply usually restricted increases in real wages in the towns and provoked tensions. A serious crisis occurred in December 1970. The Central Committee of the Polish Party changed its leadership. Edward Gierek was elected first secretary. After 1970, Poland changed the agricultural policy. The import of foodstuffs increased, giving agriculture the chance to develop, but mainly for state farms again. Main object of agricultural policy is to creation conditions for gradual changing conditions for gradual changes in the structure of agriculture and its socialistic transformation, i.e. transformation into collective or state farming and formation of new socialistic relations of production. Poland now has over 3 million private farms. It means farms above 2 acres. Every farm above 2 acres is a farm from statistical point of view in Poland. Only 14% are more than 20 acres. Of the total 3 million Polish private farms, above 700,000 farms are run by farmers of retirement age, and another 250,000 by people approaching retirement age. All told, about a third of all farms is run by farmers over 60, so very old. The basic instrument through which the state acts upon peasants' farming are prices. Prices for farm produce and the means of production for agriculture. Both the procurement prices and prices for production means purchased by the farmers are set by state and are kept in force by law. And we borrowed a lot of money, but instead of invested it into the development of agricultural production, they were in a huge part invested to keep the prices stable. And it was a very strange, abnormal situation that the pound of bread has the conditions. This policy of stable prices gives as a result such situation that the farmers, combining, for example, farming with working in industry, prefer to buy food products in the city than to produce it on their own farms. The main purpose of such a policy was, it is my opinion, to lead in silence the peasants into socialistic farming. It means to create them such conditions of farming which forces them to ask government to admit them to collective socialistic farming. In the individual cases, such a policy was successful. But in general, that have pushed our country into deep food crisis. The mechanism of this process was quite simple. In course of Gierek time, i.e. in course of the last 10 years, individual farms, with the partial exception of specialized farms, were not able to acquire in sufficient amounts even the most basic supplies necessary for their functioning, while at the same time, on the collective farms, such articles were often wasted. This situation was exploited to demonstrate that individual farms had already reached the peak of possibilities of their development, and that they are not longer able to adapt to demands of the modern national economy of the socialistic, high-developed society. The socialistic sector possesses about 20% the land, but has been absorbing near 70% of all investments in agriculture. According to the official statistics for 1979, the socialized sector used 3 times more chemical fertilizers and 3 times more concentrates per unit production than the private farms. And this produce the same per unit as a private farms. It means collective farms are on 20% of land, and they produce exactly 20% of all agricultural production, and had 3 times more supplies. It was simply great wasting. Also, it was almost impossible to buy land by private farmers. State governments gave land only to cooperatives or to the state farms. That was the way of leading in silence of Polish village into socialistic farming. It is important to mention that about 28 of rural families own farms which provide them only secondary or additional source of support. These farms, as a rule, are not larger than approximately 6 acres. The next category of rural families is composed of groups possessing farms which give them a primary but not sufficient source of support. These families comprise about 20% and possess farms ranging in size from 6 to 10 to 12 acres. The members of both of these categories of rural families are thus forced to seek non-agricultural sources of income, mainly in industry. In turn, these people acquire aspiration tending toward the formation of more permanent connection with the city in the future. According to the opinion of this group, work on the farm is increasingly seen in a negative light, as only those who are strong and stupid want to remain on such a farms. However, in the last years, such opinions have changed. In actual Polish situation, is the wide range of aid to inhabitants of the cities from their rural relatives. There even exists an appropriate saying: in the city, he will have plenty if his in-laws are from the country. This kind of aid, mainly individuals, were receiving above 2 to 3 million families in cities. At the beginning of martial law, this aid had to be stopped. There were even rumors that army will confiscate reserves on the farms. All this definitely broke the peasant trust to government, even also to army, because in fact, Polish army was the last official institution with any popular trust. Jaruzelski crackdown will only multiply the problems of governing of Poland and problems of changing policy toward village and toward individual farmers. And now it is very difficult to say what can be in the nearest future. Now I think everything is possible. Everything can occur. Thank you.
As you indicated, that most of the private farmers are in their older age now, and well, once they retire, would their land or their farms be immediately incorporated into the collective farm?
No, not immediately. They can give the land to the state, and they can have a pension, special pension. And then state theoretically can give it to another farmer, to good farmer, or to neighbors, but in practice, the state keeps this land for collective farming. And usually, simply the land was wasted, because it spent a year, 2, something, 3, and bushes right around in the land in many cases. Sometimes the land was joined to the someone to collect the funds, and then they were run.
Can they sell it? Can they sell their farms? Or just sell to their neighbors and then?
But when a farmer have a pension from state, they did not sell the land. He cannot sell.
But sometimes they prefer to sell because they will get more money from pension.
No. But the pension is very, very, it was from 1,500 zloty to 4,000. I don't know, just now, but now 1,500 zloty is exactly six pounds of ham, according to last prices. Yeah.
What is the population of Poland and what proportion is on the farm?
The total population of Poland is a little over 36 million. And population of farm would be about 10 million. And the rural population is a little higher, but not every inhabitant of rural areas is a farmer. Any question?
Could you highlight some of the changes that have been going on in the Polish family since the 40s?
There are great changes. First of all, the production functions of the family is not determining another one. For example, the production in Polish traditional family farms was the main goal of all family. Family was, first of all, productive units. It was first of all a worker team on the second family. And to this worker team belonged everything. Little children and very old people. And for example, on a procreational function of the family, great influence had the possibility to have more hands to work. It is appropriate to say maybe it will be some kind of a trait. Dzieci pieniędzy nie ma za dużo.
You never have enough money and children.
And children. It was a problem of Polish farmers' families. Now, the numbers of farming families has a lot of opportunities, a lot of possibility to change the place of living. They can be educated and they can have a job in the industry. You can see that about 6 million people migrated from village to town. And yeah, and of course is another category, it is peasant workers or part-time farmers. It's about 1.5 million in Poland. These people are coming every day to work to industry, but they are living in the village. Only mainly wives and children are running the farm.